everyone, and welcome back to Science with Sarah. Today is a special video and it's going to be long, but if you are struggling with weight loss or are interested in nutrition for a better, healthier life, I strongly suggest you watch this video until the end. We will be discussing a topic that I think a lot of you have been waiting for: how to manage insulin resistance to help you lose weight and help the cells in your body get healthy again. Let's get started. Okay, so there's quite a bit to cover, so I'm going to break it down like this. First, I'm going to talk about my personal experience, then I'm going to talk about what the science says, and third, I'm going to talk about what you can do. Also, please consult a medical professional if you have any questions. I'm not a doctor, but I'm giving you the best advice that helped me get through it. So I'm going to give you a little summary so I don't bore you, but so that you get the information that you need. Here's my story. So I was always a little on the overweight side, but I always ate healthy and same as my family. So I never understood why I couldn't lose weight or wasn't thinner. I really didn't start gaining weight until I was 17 and I just couldn't do anything to stop it. In early 2016, I was my heaviest at 178 pounds and I was pretty much desperate at that point. I was eating healthy and exercising, but never really got any results. So I ended up doing blood work and decided to see a nutritionist at about the same time. I was diagnosed with PCOS, which is a condition where insulin resistance is pretty much almost present. I was also pre-diabetic and was, as I said, overweight. My nutritionist put me on a ketogenic diet with intermittent fasting. And let me tell you, in a year and a half, I lost 30 pounds and was at the thinnest weight I could even ever remember being at. A key concept of the ketogenic diet is that you want to eat as little to no foods that raise your insulin levels as possible so that the fat and glycogen stores that you have in your cells can be burned to use as energy. But then I started getting nauseous from the fats I was eating, and although I was happy with my weight, that diet just wasn't doing it for me anymore. So I spoke to my nutritionist and he switched me to the vegan diet, still also doing intermittent fasting though. And I started to eat carbs again. The problem was I was moving around for school and I couldn't see him anymore. And since I started gaining weight because I just wasn't seeing the results I saw from keto, I let myself go. I was still vegan, but I just wasn't eating the right foods. As a result, even though my blood sugar levels have never been back up since, which I think is in part due to the intermittent fasting, which the research does show that affects that, I gained back like 2/3 of the weight I had lost and felt like there was nothing more I could do. I really struggled with this and, cried often because I was scared there was no way out. But I knew I couldn't give up. And I also knew that I wanted to stay vegan, so I started doing some research. I knew the ketogenic diet wasn't raising my insulin or blood sugar levels, so that was the direction I needed to go in. And so I recently started a vegan low GI GL diet, and I also exercise 6 days a week and have already lost weight, even though it's not going as fast as it was when I was keto. I will go into what the science says next, which brings me to point 2. I'm not going to go into all the details of each diet so that this isn't too long, but I'm going to explain the keto diet, intermittent fasting, the vegan diet, and the low GI/GL diet. So let's start with the keto diet. Essentially, the keto diet is a low-carb, high-fat diet where most of your caloric intake comes from fats. For example, when I was keto, I consumed 1,378 calories a day with 6% of calories coming from carbs, 17% from protein, and 77 calories from fat. How the keto diet works is that by restricting your carb intake that much, which means you're mostly getting it, from vegetables, your blood sugar and your insulin levels stay low. So we saw that the normal functioning of insulin is to promote storage of glucose in the form of glycogen and triglycerides. So if you keep giving the body glucose, it's going to use some of what you give it for energy, but it will mostly store the rest, and that's how you gain weight. So by restricting your carb intake, you could force your body to burn what's in the cells for energy, and your metabolic state starts to change. First, your cells are going to start producing glucose from what they have stored, and then to be able to keep up with the needs and energy demands of your body, It's going to go into ketosis. Ketosis is where ketones replace glucose as your source of energy. Since the insulin levels are low too, you go into a fat burning state essentially. This diet is really great, and in my opinion, can be a great place to start if you want to make a change. It is pretty much scientifically proven that it can reverse insulin resistance and essentially cure your type 2 diabetes. It's great also if your body currently prevents you from being able to engage in more intense physical activity, because honestly, this diet can really help you lose a lot of weight, even with light exercise like walking for 30 minutes a day, which is the minimum anyone should be doing. I will say though that one drawback of this diet is that by eating this way, you will increase your intake of saturated fats, which could cause cardiovascular issues later and increase your cholesterol, which was the case for me and was another reason why I wanted to switch diets. Also, this diet, in my opinion, is doable for a short period of time because I don't think it's a sustainable way to eat. At least it wasn't for me. And that's why I made this video to really explain the importance of, what you could do next if you don't want to continue being ketogenic and don't want to go back to the way you were eating before. So next, I'm going to talk about intermittent fasting or time-restricted feeding. As I said, I have stuck to intermittent fasting since about mid-2016, and honestly, I love it. I think that it is in part responsible for helping me keep my blood sugar levels down, even when I started eating carbs again. So what is it? Essentially, you eat in an 8-hour time frame during the day and you fast for the remaining 16 hours. So an example would be starting to eat at 11 a.m. and finishing all your meals and caloric intake for the day at 7 p.m. There has been more and more research done on this recently, and almost all studies show that just by doing this alone, you can reduce your blood sugar and insulin levels and increase insulin sensitivity, help you lose weight, and perhaps the most interesting aspect of it is that it increases ketone levels too, which is maybe why the positive effects are observed. Lastly, it's been also shown to preserve beta cell function in patients with type 2 diabetes. Moving on, I want to talk about the vegan diet. So there's honestly a lot I can say about the vegan diet and how much healthier I think and the studies have shown it is for humans, but I'm going to start by saying this. One of the first things that people say when anyone mentions a vegan diet is, oh, if you eat that way, you'll be deficient in protein or nutrients or whatever. Let me just say that for the most part, that's not true. And also, most people that are on an omnivorous diet, which means they eat meat and animal products, those people typically don't even get the daily requirements for fiber and various micronutrients. A report showed that most Americans don't even get half of their daily requirements of fiber a day, both of which are crucial for the proper functioning of our gut microbiome and of our cells. I'm going to start by explaining to you the benefits that a plant-based diet has on the body. Related to what I just said, fiber is crucial for us and has even been reported to lower risk of cancers. And I'll explain a main reason why briefly. When the fiber you eat gets to the small intestine from the stomach, it's processed and fermented by some strains of bacteria in your gut that produce molecules called short-chain fatty acids. These SCFAs are really important in helping strengthen your gut barrier so you don't get what's called a leaky gut, and they reinforce your intestinal immune system, which is super important in making sure that what you eat doesn't make you sick pretty much or doesn't cause inflammation. Interestingly, as you age, but also in people with type 2 diabetes, the bacteria that produce short-chain fatty acids are reduced, which is why the more fiber you eat, the better your intestinal microbiome will be, and the better your beta cells and insulin sensitivity and your blood sugar levels will be. Studies have shown in general that consumption of a plant-based diet significantly decreases risks of type 2 diabetes, whereas the typical American diet, high in animal products and refined carbs, increases your risk by almost 3 times. Also, studies show that the more meat you eat, the greater your risk of increased inflammation, higher cholesterol, heart disease, cancer, and even a greater risk of dying earlier than people that consume less to no meat. There are biological reasons for this. I promise you I'm not making this up. Pretty much, when you ingest high amounts of essential amino acids and branched-chain amino acids, which is the case when you consume meat, your body produces more of a hormone called insulin-like growth factor 1, or IGF-1. This hormone stimulates cell division in healthy cells, but also cancerous cells. This is why there are increased risk of cancer with meat consumption, because your cells are dividing, which is important when they're young to grow, but it could be detrimental when you age. This has been proven too. Scientists have looked at IGF-1 levels in centenarians, which are people that live past 100 years of age, and they show that these people and their children have low levels of IGF-1 in their bodies, and low IGF-1 is correlated to a longer lifespan. In fact, the diets of centenarians all over the world are similar, and it's the dominance of vegetable, fruits, and legumes, as well as whole grains over animal products or refined carbs. Although I could expand on this, I'm going to move on to the importance of following a plant-based diet that is specifically low GI and GL for the treatment of diabetes or obesity. So now let's talk about a low GI GL diet. So most people haven't heard of this. So what is it? Well, the glycemic index measures the impact a certain food has on blood glucose levels and insulin response. Foods that have a low GI are digested more slowly and raise insulin and blood sugar levels less than foods with a high GI. Low GI foods typically have a value of less than 55, though it's typically better to restrict foods with a value lower than 45 for optimal results. The problem with GI is that it doesn't take into account portions, and it is typically based on 50 grams of carbs, which is why GL was created. So what is GL? GL, or glycemic load, is a measure that uses the GI value of a specific food, but adjusts it for the portion size or serving size of the food that's being eaten, which makes it a better measure to focus on because you're getting more comparable effects of different foods on blood sugar and insulin levels. For GL, the scale is different than for GI, so if you want to eat low GL foods, they will have to have a value of 10 or less. Medium GL values are between 11 and 19, and values of 20 and over are high GL. Since foods like fats don't raise insulin or blood sugar, they don't have a GI or GL for the most part. So I use this mainly as a tool to know which types of carbs I can eat and which I can't based on their value. I stick to foods that have a GI under 55 in general and a GL under 11. I can also make a video on common carbs I have in my pantry if you guys were interested, so you could get some ideas, because I don't just limit myself to legumes. It doesn't have to be, a boring diet. There are countless studies done also that I listed below showing the effectiveness of low GI, especially of plant-based ones, on type 2 diabetes, obesity, and insulin resistance. So this next point I want to make is crucial, and if you do want to pick one thing to remember from this, it's this. When people say stop eating processed food or refined carbs, it's not just because. I barely eat it anymore, and it's hard, and I do miss it, but that's the point. As a society, we've become addicted to these products and honestly dependent on them. But there's a biological reason for why they need to be cut out that we're going to talk about. With the increase in sodas and processed and refined carbs that have come to market since the 70s, people thought that fructose, which is the main sweetener used in all these packaged food products, was amazing because it had virtually no GI. It does not raise blood sugar or insulin. In addition to the refined grains that are used, which do nothing but increase your blood sugar, fructose is, I'd say, the main contributor to increasing obesity levels in the country and is responsible for most, if not all, of the features of metabolic syndrome. A study showed that daily soda drinkers have a 30% increase in visceral fat, but also increased liver fat over 6 years. It also increased the risk of type 2 diabetes independent of obesity. Fructose is really the poison that's making more and more people sick. So why does fructose have this effect? Our body uses the molecule glucose for energy, so it's important that it circulates to get to all cells. On the other hand, fructose is not really used by our cells. Most of the fructose goes straight to the liver and can promote glucose uptake into the liver, which we all know will mean that if the liver is taking in more glucose, it's storing more glycogen and triglycerides. It's also been shown that high fructose intake induces hyperinsulinemia, which will result in insulin resistance, as well as is a leading cause in the development of NASH, or non-alcoholic steatohepatitis, which is the most severe form of non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. Fructose is one of the sweetest sugars and has been shown to be involved in modulating hormones that affect hunger, resulting in increased food consumption, ultimately resulting in obesity. Anyways, this is really important, and our public health officials and people in power need to play a bigger role in taking this seriously without being scared of the financial repercussions that may occur from changes that need to be made within food corporations, and in realizing how this problem will affect our healthcare costs if these numbers keep going up, which they will. but also how they will affect the people of their communities and their health. So finally, what can you do? I'm just going to end by saying what you can do using this information to get better. I would definitely suggest intermittent fasting for anyone. Then I'd say to try the ketogenic diet with light exercise to start if you're just starting out. Make sure you take 20 to 30-minute walks every day because this will help you form a habit for a healthy lifestyle going forward. If you like the ketogenic diet and want to stay on it, keep going. Over time, you could start including HIIT workouts and some resistance training progressively. If, like me, the ketogenic diet was not for you or you just don't want to try it, try a plant-based, low GI/GL diet. Personally, I aim for about 1,800 calories a day, which is the number I reached after using a website that calculates it by taking into account activity level. And they also reduced that number by 500 calories about to help you lose weight rather than maintain your weight. I can also put a link to one of these calculators below. Although I'm still learning what proportion of macros are best for me, I am currently following a ratio of 50% carbs, all low GI/GL, 25% fat, and 25% protein. And I'll have a cheat meal like real pasta once a week. I also feel less bad about having a cheat meal on this diet rather than on a ketogenic diet because since I'm already eating carbs, it doesn't feel like I'm cheating, really. That's why I find this diet much more easy to maintain. I've also been doing about 40-minute HIIT workouts 6 days a week and will incorporate resistance trainings at the gyms when they open back up. In 3 months, I've lost about 12 pounds so far following this regimen. So these would be my suggestions. Thank you so much for watching this long but important video. And as always, my sources are below and don't hesitate to leave comments if you have any questions. I'll see you soon.